thank you so much for having us all, Jordana. And hello, everyone. We were just all talking backstage, and before we dive into our conversation on circularity and sustainable supply chains, we just want to say that we on the panel and all of you watching, if you're Black, that we feel your pain, we understand what is going on in terms of police brutality and anti-Blackness in the US. And we want to start out by saying that we stand with you in love and solidarity. Your lives matter. And we are outraged and our fists are up with you. And we are all working in fashion, which also has long, deep-rooted issues in terms of racism. And we are all committed to making change in our industry that to create more opportunities for everyone and for you if you are Black. So with that said, we're gonna move our questions a little and make our first question about more governance issues and how we can, in fashion, incorporate equity, positive change, opportunities for Black people in fashion companies today, and how can we move forward with positive action and change the model that has continues to keep institutionalized racism there. So if you want to share any thoughts, any of our panelists, we'll start with that.
Yeah, I'll start. You know, obviously, this is a very sad time in America. And as you mentioned, it is really important that we all stand together to support the Black communities against violence, discrimination, injustice. But as we talk about opportunities, this is the time. Everybody's outraged. This is the opportunity for us to try to make some change. We talk about doing it through conversations, education, definitely voting. Everyone really needs to vote, but we can also donate to charities that will help further the trials that Black people are going through now that help us in that respect. Prioritizing diversity in the workplace is very important. I've come up 30 years in the fashion industry. I want to see more Black people promoted into leadership roles. I think that's very important. Perception is key. If we don't have those roles, although we're qualified for them, that leaves a perception. So, you know, making these small differences can help and evoke a larger change. Black Lives Matter.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think it's incredible that we're here as this community coming together to talk about these things. On this panel here, we're all, you know, female founders. And I think for any founders out there, female or male, the power is in your hands to actually start now building the businesses for the future world that we want to see. And so in our own policies, in our own governance, in our own hiring practices, anything we can do as we're building these incredible, powerful, sustainable businesses. A part of sustainability is absolutely people and planet and profit. And how can we bring that together now?
And I would just add that, you know, I think one of the most important pieces of this conversation is this is a multi-pronged approach. It's going to take a lot more than just, you know, the marketing. And I think something that we can learn, I think all of us from the sustainability, you know, playbook is that for companies and brands to move away from just the marketing, right? You have to actually do it in action. You actually have to do it embedded in your business. And so whether that's bringing, you know, Black folks and Black people into board seats, you know, as investors in the company, as partners, as executives, you see so many brands marketing to these communities, and very few times are they the ones actually making decisions behind. And we've heard great discussions today at Fashion Innovation that even speak to some of these things of how major misses in marketing are happening because you don't have people of color in those rooms and in those conversations as the things are happening. I think Beyonce is like a great example as well of, you know, when she walked out reportedly from Reebok, when she said, wait a minute, and it was an all-white team. She said, is this the team that I'm going to be working with? She said, this does not represent who I am or the people that I want to be, you know, working with and the consumers I want to be partnering with. So I think it's just really important that that brands really put it into action and at the highest levels. And only then when you see true leadership speaking about this in action, then you actually see real systemic change.
because my background is not fashion, I can just speak from waste management and the environmental movement, which also has a problem with equity and access. Sustainability tends to be pretty inaccessible for a lot of people. And in waste management, where resources are placed or transfer stations are placed or where waste happens is also not entirely fair across cities and locations. And so I think there's a lot to be done, not just in fashion, but if we're interested in sustainability and in the environmental movement, making sure that diversity is part of the environmental education too.
Yes, and thank you so much. And you're right, when it comes to sustainability, it often focuses on the environment, and it focuses on biodiversity and nature and the planet. And we do need to make sure that it focuses on opportunities for everyone, and that great corporate positions are available for Black people, and great opportunities to move up for Black people. And in our students, I teach also, so that making sure that internships and everything are available. So let's move towards then, as well as equity, circularity, and that sustainable supply chain that you all work in one part or another in. So how is it that you each work, because you each work with brands, so how do you work with brands to build equitable, sustainable, or circular supply chains? Who wants to go first?
Okay, I can go first. Okay,
no,
Stephanie.
go ahead. You got it.
What we find in the fashion industry, that most of them do recognize the importance of integrating sustainable practices into their operating model. So our clients either have a sustainable strategy in place, or they're about to have one. But in either case, they are taking steps that will contribute to a circular economy. However, when we come to talk to them, we definitely make it a point that our clients have a strong understanding on the circular economy and its concepts, including environmental and business benefits. What we also do is we inform them that, today more than ever, that there are partnerships and joint ventures that companies can get into that already utilizes those innovative business models. So definitely we partner with them. We help them build their strategies. We make sure that their processes and operating models are efficient and could be applicable to the circular model. And then it's really important that they have the right change capabilities within their organization. Because when you put these practices in place, if the entire organization is not on board, you're not going to see the results that you're looking for. Most of the companies are really looking for sustainability. They're looking for transparency, accountability, and governance across their organization and across the supply chain. So that's what we work with them on, because we've had a lot of experience. I said over 30 years that I've been in this business, and a lot of my consultants on the team have vast experience in this area. So we feel like we're very well knowledgeable to help our clients.
Yeah, and I agree with what you said in that, a lot of times when you get these brands or retailers in fashion and you start working with them, you hope that they already have some notion around what sustainability means and what their goals are, but a lot of times they don't. And, I think the hardest challenge in this is that S-word sustainability means so many things to so many people, and it almost can feel overwhelming. You don't know where to begin. And, a lot of times the model that we use and the way we go into them is, yes, the ultimate goal may be a totally 100% transparent supply chain with full track and trace from farm to finished good to end of life. That's great. And that's an ultimate dream and vision. But where do we start today? How are we going to get there? And especially with everything going on in the world, to actually give them something they can use to survive today and thrive tomorrow. And I think because so many brands and retailers today are sitting on, we have a crisis of supply, right? There is so much unused inventory from raw materials to finished goods out there, that it provides opportunities for all of us to look at new business models and help them realize that this is an opportunity, and looking at your waste is not just a sustainable good for good's sake. It is about the circular economy. The second word is economy, an economic principle to help you save and make money today while also doing well and doing good. I mean, how can you say no to that? It truly can be a win-win-win. And I think that gives them a place to start today, and then they can continue to grow from there.
Right. Absolutely.
I can jump in. FASCRAP works with almost 500 fashion companies now, and we particularly pick up design waste, fabric headers, offcut, sample yardage, extra yardage. And we've also been moving into sustainable destruction of proprietary goods. So sample garments, a lot of celebrity collabs that fall through, but the merch is already made. That stuff needs to get destroyed and not put on shelves. And that proprietary destruction is usually by incineration. And so we're moving that to a more circular outlet. Speaking of transparency, which has come up a lot, I think one of the things that brands can do in sort of their sustainability education is question. FASCRAP comes with, here's a sort of like prepackaged solution, and we're going to give you this data. But very few brands actually like follow up with us about like, well, once you have it, then where does it go? They just kind of trust that we say that we'll do with it what we say we will. And so I think there's the first step of like choosing an outlet or choosing a solution, but then there needs to be the continued interest to see like, well, can I go further? And that's an evolutionary process, I think, along all of sustainability. Is like step one is not all there is.
I would just add that, for us at GoodOps, our consultancy, we really work with leaders of organizations. So whether it's the CEO or founder that has that vision of truly making an impact. And we've been fortunate to have some amazing clients who actually do have a very human-centered approach to sustainability. And they really want to see the impact of their garments and of their products and accessories, on the workers that are actually making them. And so when you think about circularity, many times it is just starting from that initial creation of that fabric or that material. Or is it toxic? What is the design process? How much waste is even created from the for the onset? And what does it do to the local communities, right? Where is that waste going locally? Because we're seeing that a lot of times there's phenomenal new models of downstream, and I think that that's going to continue to grow. But what do we do about the local communities who are actually making these products? You have tons of rejected products as well because of quality issues that the brand takes no responsibility for. But many times it's because of the way that the actual products again are designed, or the price points that have to be done, or the ecosystems around even some of those materials. And so we really try to actually embed the social and the environmental always together. Sometimes I would say even putting social first, because we actually feel, and we can talk about this, in this panel, but that you're not going to get, or we as a community or a society are not going to make the moves in environmental if we don't take care of the people first, especially the people that are living and breathing the consequences of our decisions.
That's interesting. One thing we've also noticed as the conversation has kind of evolved over time in a beautiful way, because people are waking up to these issues now more than ever, which is one positive coming out of everything. I think when we started having these conversations with some brands and retailers around their waste and their supply chains and sustainability, you would only be talking to the corporate directors of social responsibility, who are incredible brand champions. They get it. They are passionate about it. But we have found more and more as the conversation has evolved, especially with big enterprise customers, when you also have in the room at that table diversity of thought, including, yes, the types of people that are there, but also their positions, the CFOs, the CMOs, the CIOs and the CEOs, the CEOs, they should all be in that room, because this truly is at that scale. And it is sustainability. The sustainability team is a part of that, but it needs to come from all of those voices to be a cohesive, to your point, message. So I agree.
Great, thank you. I'm actually going to proceed with questions, but I'm taking notes because I have a question for each of you that as you're saying things that are making me wonder. But let's talk about roadblocks, because there's so many stakeholders that need to be involved. As you said, Stephanie, everybody needs a seat at the table, but sometimes it's like other countries. There's all different types of people that need seats at the table. So regardless if it's getting through one of those people, but what are some big challenges or roadblocks that you've each had? So Stephanie and Jessica, maybe in terms of material circularity, and Ilka and Divya, maybe in terms of transparency, accountability, but really, working towards partnerships is not an easy thing, right? So what's a challenge you've each had, and how did you handle it?
I'm happy to jump in. So, for us, when we first started looking at this issue of waste and unused fabrics and supply chains, we would go to our customers, and a lot of times they didn't even know what they had in waste. And if they did, it was managed maybe on an Excel spreadsheet with handwritten notes. And, sometimes those were 10x or more errors of what they thought they had in liability. They ended up having a ton more of unused inventory. And that's a problem for sustainability, but it's also a problem for your business's bottom line. And we realized that to work with larger and larger enterprise customers, for us, we had to create a solution that would allow them to kind of digitally innovate their way out of this crisis of supply. And by that, I mean, we created a technology solution that allows them to take those Excel spreadsheets and all that data that sits in different places, pull it into one centralized database and start tracking your waste in one place, and understanding the data and the analytics about why you have that waste, how to then sell it and make money, but ultimately over time, how can you minimize those waste streams going forward? So that's kind of been, it was always something we thought about in our business. We started with the marketplace and a place to sell your waste, but realized that, we needed more information. And I think that's the beauty of the solutions of everyone here that they'll talk about, is that that connectivity and growth and the opportunities there to help people do better, but quickly, easily, and efficiently.
Yeah, I agree. I think, Stephanie, where you do a really good job on recovering the value of excess and giving brands opportunity for that to be part of their bottom line. For FASCRAP, one of the biggest roadblocks is that we're essentially a recycling service, and the way that brands pay for metal, glass, and plastic recycling, we're asking them for a service fee for the textile recycling. It costs us money to pick up, it costs us money to shred and turn it into insulation. And so the most pushback we get is well, isn't this a donation? But we don't really think that we're donating a plastic bottle when we put it in a blue bin to be recycled. We understand that that's a process and that there's an output, and also that we have to buy recycled content to keep that going. And so the service fee and the re-education around textiles as a waste stream as opposed to a donation is something that we work really hard to do, because not all of it can be reused. If it can, it's great. If it can be redistributed, resold, donated, but there's so much waste that happens that's too small to be reused. And so you have to think holistically, and not everything is a donation. Some things do require services, and if the brands aren't fronting that, it's not entirely fair to put those burdens of waste and the cost of waste on the consumer, when consumers really have nothing to do with the waste of brands, or what fabrics brands are choosing to use and whether or not that material can or can't be recycled. That's all super internal and shouldn't be an external cost for people around the landfills or for their customers.
I would say for us, what we've seen is, the standardization of impact. How do you come up with a universal sort of assessment of what is impact? And I think that's been one of the biggest challenges for the industry as a whole. We have a lot of great efforts out there, but in terms of, I think one of the benefits and maybe challenges of having different people in the room is multiplicity of viewpoints, right? You'll have many different entities that have different perspectives of what is considered enough or the right approach. So whether that's the brand, whether that's the supplier, whether that's local communities or governments or NGOs. And so I think, one of the things that we did early on is we did a deep analysis of over 500 standards and certifications and marks across industries, and really broke down where is the actual impact happening on E, on S, and on G, and trying to come up with some sort of an understanding of what, and it's a spectrum, right? It's not to say that there's yes and no, or good or bad. It's really around, as for brands and as consultants or as providers of services, that we need to make sure the brand understands, well, what are you actually trying to accomplish? Where do you actually fall in this spectrum? Now, when you go out and market or speak to these things, where can you really feel authentic, and where do you want to move to? Because we do want brands and companies to feel, empowered to make the commitments and the goals, and to feel comfortable to share where they are on the journey, knowing where they're heading towards. And so I think that's something that's still being developed right now, and we see a lot of movement happening across the industry. But I think it's going to take a technology approach and a data centered approach of really standardizing, what we all see, where you fall on the spectrum, and then really holding brands accountable.
Yeah, and I think it's already happening. You're seeing with the United Nations SDGs and others, there is beginning to be some kind of conversation around here's where we are today, and here's a goal to work towards that's high level, but has great value, and here's how we're going to get there.
Yeah, I totally agree with what everyone's saying. And, when I think about that question and I say, we actually find that the biggest challenge and roadblocks of sustainability happens internally. It happens within the organization. And so, our approach is that we recommend companies make circular a core tenet of their corporate strategies. That way, as Stephanie was saying, it has to come from the top. You need those leaders to come in and say, this is the direction that our company wants to go in. We know that there needs to be a common understanding and vision across the organization. So everyone really knows what roles they play. Again, when you look at the supply chain, it's not just everything that happens outside of the supply chain or the organization, it's all those functional areas that play a role. And they need to know that, and they need to be on the same page to make it happen. We also will help them build, once they know what role they play, they can also build, that drive to sustainability and meeting those goals. Collaboration is key. Adding measures of progress, key. So everyone can be held accountable to do their part, and that's where they'll see the sustainability and see that they're meeting those goals. And I bring that up because, again, it always really starts from the top. Everyone has good intentions. They need to know if the actions that they're doing, does it play into the overarching goal of the company and strategy of the company.
Those top-down models, though, it does need to come from the top, but those top-down models are part of what's created the culture that we have right now. So it really does need to come top-down. It needs to come bottom-up, and it has to trickle across and constantly across the organization or the community. Let's talk about cost for a moment, because Divya, you brought up assessing impacts and the difficulty on that, right? One thing it's easy to assess is profit and loss. So, and that's what the brands I speak to often are really, that's what they want. They do recognize they need to shift to more sustainable and circular practices. They want to make this a mission, but they don't want it to cost a lot, or they want it to be cost neutral. That's like I keep hearing that. How can it be cost neutral? So is there a place a brand can start that you think that is accomplishable and tangible, and that is at least cost efficient for them, where they can do this, and where are they going to offset the cost that this is going to
Actually, I love this question, even though I think many people find it to be scary. The reason why is I'm a practitioner of supply chain for 16, 17 years now. I've done it in-house at huge companies, like literally Walmart, startups, other large corporations, small startups across the board. And one of the things I learned very early on, which is we take a very pragmatic approach to sustainability, is because the amount of efficiency or lack thereof that companies already have is the first place I'd start in finding those dollars. There's for example, like a Walmart that is all about low margin and efficiency. So much of our daily job was to be able to create more efficient systems and find cost saving opportunities and increase quality all at the same time. For startups, you have the same problem. You have a limited amount of resources and funds. So you have to be super smart and super sharp in how you actually run your operations. And so what we always, think about when companies say, well, what is the cost? It's that, well, first, you need to also wake up and open up under the hood and see what are you doing today in your regular operations and business that you can start to think through cost savings, things like ordering in volume. The amount of fashion brands I know that air freight, it's insane. There's so many different ways with the materials that you're using, right? There's so many different ways, the machinery that's being used also on the ground, and the maintenance costs, and then the turnover of factory workers. It's across the board. And so what we do is really help companies say, okay, let's talk about a tangible approach. Identify the cost that it would take for you to actually accomplish this. Come up with that dollar number. Now that you have a target, go back into your supply chain or go back into your operations and see all the different places that you could tighten here, tweak here, pull this lever down, partnerships, excess waste, maybe projects that aren't actually going anywhere, maybe reducing your product line. There's so many ways to actually accomplish that again, and I think this is something that came up earlier around, don't pass it off to the customer. Actually your responsibility as a business to actually find these solutions, do them appropriately. But the first place is start with your own business and your own backyard, so to speak.
Right. It's so true. But it's funny because I feel like everybody hears the word sustainable and you automatically assume that it's going to cost you more money. And when you look at it in so many ways, it actually saves and makes you money, right? And you're talking about efficiency, but we get this question all the time. And, an obvious, to Divya, what you were saying, an obvious first place is look at your unused inventory, look at your waste. That accounts in some instances up to 15% of your bottom line. Do you know how much money that is that you can sell, monetize, and then put back into your supply chain doing good things? And I mean, it will more than fund a lot of these powerful sustainability initiatives. And I think Kering did an amazing job in their sustainability reporting because they literally printed on their website for any of us to read the blueprint for how being sustainable and has saved and made them more money and improved their bottom line. And here's how they did it. And that's obviously, it's a big report and a powerful analysis, but there are small and easy steps like your waste that you can start today that has a massive impact on sustainability and gives you the funds to go put into other places in your supply chain. And I say that not just because it's the brand and retailers' obligations, but also for us as consumers and end consumers. When we go to shop and you're buying something and you're thinking about, obviously, especially now more than ever, how much something costs that you want and wanting to save money. We understand that. But you have to think about cost a little differently. That shirt that you're buying, when you have two in hand, one that is made with organic cotton, let's say, and non, the one with organic cotton may cost more, but it may be softer, thicker, and last longer. So actual number of wears you get out of it is more than that less expensive t-shirt. So it actually costs you less in the grand scheme of things, but we don't always think that way, right? We think in that immediate moment when we're paying. It just requires a little bit of a shift in thinking, but at the end of the day, sustainability can actually save and make you money.
I totally agree. One of the things that we always recommend is that brands look across their entire supply chain and identify those areas where they can reduce costs and do it in a responsible way. But our clients are embracing new ways of working. Some of them are selecting style categories that they can use the new innovative materials. Others are reducing the amount of seasonal development in their materials and their samples. And doing that, they save a lot of money. And then sometimes they may design garments for longevity. And these are the companies that are already working with a network that could help them either resell their products or rent out their products, but at least they're designing it for that durability so it can last longer. But every one of those actions are tangible and cost efficient because the brands are already in the business of making garments. So they're not really learning a new business. They're just learning how to do it in a different way and more purposeful.
I think on that point, like reevaluating some of the traditions in fashion is where there's the most opportunity for things to change. We're particularly looking at end of life in the design process, but in doing that, we've seen so many headers from so many mills that are essentially looked at once and thrown away. And so one of our new initiatives is instead, what if those mills sent sample yardage? Because instead of a 6-inch square that's not really usable, if instead the brand was getting 1 yard, that can then be donated and reused in an actual way. And so even just reevaluating that traditional sampling process, there's so many opportunities there for something to become more sustainable and for there to be cost savings, because if mills didn't have to print all of these little packages and cut all of these little squares and ship them, which when we're looking at waste, almost 20% of what we pick up are just the paper from headers. And so even just the shipping costs, if you were shipping without all of that paper, you're saving 20%. So I think there's a lot of ways just reevaluating small practices on the daily of how can this not be wasteful, or where can this save me money by asking for something different or looking for other options. I think that there's a lot there. this was like sort of touched on, but I find it interesting that so many of the brands that we work with don't want to share their name or their sustainability steps or the data that we give them. And I think there's a discomfort about sharing sustainability info. But I'm seeing more and more reports that like those steps, even baby steps, even if they're not 100% change, but those steps are marketable. And so they should feel, like you were saying, more comfortable for that to help offset some of the costs of that. If you're able to efficiently speak about these changes and really like make sure that they're targeted and purposeful, that potentially there is a marketing income there that is valuable to help offset some of those choices that are, it's an investment, I guess, those investment in the choices in the beginning.
Right. Amazing. I'm going to sum up a couple of the questions that have been coming in from attendees. You can address any of them you want. And I'm also going to ask that you kind of be brief in your answers right now, as we just have a few minutes left. But could you either talk to keeping materials and product in use, specifically, you know, how to reduce clothing in landfills? There's a question from Sandy, you know, how can cities incorporate and help with that in terms of recycling fabric and textile bins, et cetera. And then we also have a question from Jeannie in regards to what do you say to those brands who just say, I don't want to be first, you know, or they're just resistant to up and doing it the same way. I'm not going to mess with success. So either of those dive in, or if you want to respond to how do you actually ensure transparency and accountability? Any of those three, and just less than a minute each, please.
I can quickly talk about clothing waste. Having worked at DSNY in New York City, I was overseeing the city's clothing recycling program. And a lot of cities are moving towards textile waste as a recycling stream in what they pick up. And so making sure that like city governments understand that that's something that you want to see and that's something that's available and there's resources behind that is an option. New York City puts bins for free in all apartment buildings. And I've seen similar programs in San Francisco, in Austin. And so a lot of cities are, after addressing composting, the next big stream of waste is textiles. And so there is attention there, and it's possible for that to be part of city collection.
I can speak on trying to ensure transparency. One of the biggest push right now is digitizing the supply chain. And that's really using these new technologies that are out there in software. And what makes it exciting to us is that, you know, they're using 3D technology. That technology is a big enabler for transparency. Not only will you be using it within your corporation, your partners are using it. So therefore you can see where your materials are coming from, where their origin, what's their content. And also just make sure that all of the data that you have is accurate. So then you can make better decisions once you know what's going on through the technology. So technology is huge for the transparency part of the supply chain.
Perfect, thank you.
I'll just speak really quickly to, you know, brands that are afraid to be first, because I think, and that feel that what they're doing is working well. I think that they need to wake up and realize that the consumer is changing, the demographic is changing, the desires and wants are changing. And for brands that don't fully embrace this, they're going to be left behind. But I get the nervousness. I think that they need to look at this though as a differentiator, as a competitive edge, to partner with those that do know what they're doing and find the right solutions, pilot, test, have your MVPs, don't feel that you have to do it all at once. And if you're not ready to be a first mover, then be ready to be a fast follower.
And on the fun side for end consumers, we can start to gamify this, right? And make everybody a part of the conversation. We're part of an initiative that is working towards that, as well as changing the laws. What are the solutions that brands and customers can adopt in order to, you know, make this change happen? And I think for end consumers to know by my recycling, what is the contribution I'm getting points for doing those good acts, and learning what you actually, what impact you're actually having, you know, knowing that you can change the world.
Great. And then our last question, because we only have time for one more, is either there's been so much that 2020 has brought at us in just a few months already. So what can you leave all of our attendees with that's exciting and innovative in terms of circular resale, recycling, any of the circular models that you can leave them with that you just want to talk about, or final thoughts that are optimistic. And also, if they want to reach out to you, also put a plug in for yourself of what they could come to you for. So who wants to start? And about like 45 seconds each.
I could do one really fast. I think something that's really exciting is the movement in fashion and food at the same time, and a real movement around plant-based products. And I think we're seeing that in materials. And I think that's a really exciting place to think about when you think about the pineapple leather, the mushroom leather, a lot of innovation happening in the space. There's obviously massive animal rights and movement in that space when you start limiting the use of animals in fashion, as well as also the environmental impact of that. So I think it's a really exciting space to explore. I think brands should really embrace that and really figure out what is the right way to introduce those products. But I feel that that's a really exciting space to look into, and some real progress on the food side that brands and fashion can really learn from. Happy to hear from any one of you, thoughts, responses, business, whatever. You can reach me at Divya, D-I-V-Y-A, at GoodOps.co. It's been an absolute pleasure to be here. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I can quickly go. I am sort of working in a space where we're taking all of these resources from big companies and then making them available to individuals. And so I'm really inspired by how many people are empowered to mend and repair and DIY and taking real ownership of garments that in a lot of cases weren't made to last, but instead of continuing to feed into that system, making something last longer and like really loving what they have and learning new skills to mend and repair. And so I think that's really exciting. And yeah, when we reopen, we have a fabric thrift store for fashion offcuts. We also have volunteer programs where you can get fabric for free. So FASCRAP.org, and my email is jessica@FASCRAP.org.
Terrific.
Yeah, I think it's an exciting time right now, especially for founders and startups and entrepreneurs out there. You can look at what's going on in this world and have awesome business models that can change it going forward. And we're happy to help you both on the selling of waste, but also on the long-term vision and plan as well. We're at Stephanie@queenofraw.com.
Thank you. And Ilka.
So again, what's really exciting in this space is not only the technology, as I mentioned earlier, but all of the partnerships that could be made through these new companies that are emerging that can help companies get rid of their inventory at a lower cost instead of burning them and putting them in the landfills. So I'm excited to work in that space with my clients. You can reach us at JordanAlliance.com. I'm Ilka Jordan. Reach out to me on LinkedIn or our website.
Wonderful. And really, we all have to admit that the way we've been doing business is part of the problem, part of the social and environmental issues. So make the confession, decide you're going to change, commit to that change. And as you said, no one wants to be left behind. So in committing to change, you can be one of the leaders. And no echo babble. As you had said, with marketing, there's so much vagueness in it. So, be true and genuine. Hi, Jordana.
Hi.
Hi, Jordana.
I want to let you all know that so much insight, but so much honesty. I love how honest all of you were and how straight to the point. And we need that now. We can't, beat around the bush anymore for changes that need to be made in every facet of the supply chain, and with everything going on with equality and, humanization and sustainability models. So with all of that, you guys were all phenomenal. And I thank you all so much. This conversation was super important to be had. And I really thank all of you for being a part of it.